The morning was perfect, the kind that makes you pause and breathe in deep, grateful for the quiet. I was at my drafting table, pencil scratching out a new design for a client's mountain retreat, when a voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "Do you even know who you're dealing with?" it asked, sharp and uninvited, before I even heard the gravel crunch underfoot or the creak of my porch. I looked up, pencil frozen mid-stroke, and there she was, Lillian Voss, standing in my doorway like she owned the place. The sun spilled through the tall windows of my cabin, warming the pine floorboards my great-uncle had laid down decades ago in this tucked-away corner of Willow Creek, Montana. It was late September 2024, and the air carried the crisp scent of aspen leaves and the faint shimmer of the nearby river. I'd been sketching, my coffee still steaming, lost in the rhythm of a morning without interruptions. Then Lillian happened. She stood there, one hand gripping the doorframe, the other clutching a sleek leather portfolio so tightly it looked ready to split. Her tailored coat screamed money, the kind of stitching you don't find in small-town boutiques. Her hair was pinned back, not a strand out of place, and her eyes sharp, calculating didn't wander. They sized up my cabin like she was appraising it for auction. Behind her, two county inspectors lingered, clipboards in hand, their badges gleaming with small-town authority. Lillian didn't bother with pleasantries. She stepped inside without asking, her heels clicking like a countdown. But then, something odd happened. Her gaze slid past me, past the drafting table, and locked onto the far corner of the room. Her face paled, like she'd seen a ghost. Her voice, so confident a moment ago, faltered. "Governor Harper," she said, barely above a whisper. I followed her eyes. There, in the old leather armchair by the window, sat Governor Abigail Harper. She was flipping through a stack of papers, her reading glasses perched low on her nose, looking as comfortable as if she'd been coming here for years. She didn't stand, didn't even look up right away. She finished her sentence, then peered over her glasses. "Ms. Voss," she said, her voice calm but heavy, the kind that makes you feel the weight of every word. Lillian blinked, her composure crumbling like dry leaves. She hadn't expected this. Whatever plan she'd walked in with was unraveling, and I could see it in the way her shoulders tensed. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch, savoring the moment. I'd been waiting for trouble, though not this exact kind. Lillian had been circling me for weeks, letters from the local homeowners association about zoning issues, strange calls to my clients, an unannounced visit from a building inspector. It all had her fingerprints. But now, standing in my cabin, she was off balance, and I wasn't about to help her find her footing. "What brings you here, Lillian?" I asked, my tone light, like she'd just popped by for a chat. Her eyes flicked to me, sharp for a split second, then back to the governor. "I wasn't aware you were meeting," she stammered, clearing her throat. "You didn't knock?" I said, still casual. "So I'm guessing you weren't expecting to meet anyone." One of the inspectors shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us like he'd stumbled into a trap. Governor Harper closed her folder with a deliberate snap. "Mr. Brennan and I are discussing a state project," she said, her voice even. "On the record." Lillian's face tightened. If she was smart and she washed have backed off then, retreated to regroup. But pride is a funny thing. She stepped further inside, the inspectors trailing her like reluctant shadows. "I have official business," she said, her voice clawing back some of its edge. "Homeowners Association matters." The governor raised an eyebrow, and the air in the room shifted, like the moment before a storm breaks. I didn't know how this would end, but one thing was clear. Lillian Voss had walked into something bigger than she'd bargained for, and I was right there with her. To understand why Lillian's visit felt like a declaration of war, you have to go back a month. It was a warm August afternoon, the kind where the river sparkles like cut glass and the air hums with dragonflies. I was out back, sanding a pine railing, when I heard heel-sharp deliberation my front steps. Not boots, not sandals, but heels, clicking with purpose. I rounded the corner, and there she was. "Mr. Brennan?" she asked, her smile bright but cold, a clipboard tucked under her arm. "I'm Lillian Voss, chair of the Willow Creek Community Council." The title sounded official, but the way she said it, like it carried a federal warrant, made me pause. She wore a linen blazer despite the heat, her hair untouched by the breeze off the river. Everything about her screamed control. She said she was collecting input for a fall fundraiser, something about riverfront conservation. Harmless enough, Willow Creek loves its preservation projects. My family's cabin has sat on this land for 3 generations, so I invited her in. Big mistake. She didn't comment on the pine walls my great-uncle had milled himself or the framed sketches of homes I'd designed. Her eyes locked onto my setup dual monitors, a high-end printer, blueprints rolled neatly in the corner. Her questions started casual. How long have you lived here? Work from home full-time. How many clients do you take on? I answered politely, but something about her tone, the way her pen hovered over the clipboard without writing, set my nerves on edge. She drifted toward my drafting table, her fingers brushing the edge. Quite the operation, she said, her voice light but probing. Almost commercial. I gave her a look. I'm a licensed architect. I design homes, public spaces, right here in this cabin. Her smile didn't waver, but it sharpened. Of course, she said, scribbling something. As she left, she handed me a glossy flyer for the fundraiser Rivers and Sunsets, all very pretty. But something slipped from her papers, a laminated ID badge, not for the community council, but for Riverstone Development Group. She snatched it back fast, her smile flickering. Old pass, she said. Nothing important. Then she was gone, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and a bad feeling in my gut. The dragonflies had gone quiet. I knew then that Lillian wasn't here for charity. She was hunting. A few days later, I overheard her in town at Carter's Hardware, her voice low and urgent in the next aisle. He'll sell, she said. He just doesn't know it yet. A man's voice replied, smooth and confident. The property's worthless without the water rights. A pause, papers shuffling. Then Lillian. I've got the old survey files from my late husband's firm. If we move fast, Riverstone will pay us both 6 figures. The man laughed. Then you'd better get that architect to break. I grabbed a bag of screws I didn't need and slipped out, my heart pounding. Water rights. Survey files. Riverstone. My cabin sat on prime riverfront, but I'd never thought about what lay beneath it. My great-uncle once mentioned an old spring, a family secret he brushed off. Now it felt like a target. The next morning, I drove to the county records office, a squat brick building that smelled of old paper and time. The clerk, Martha, knew me by name. What's up, Tom? She asked, adjusting her glasses. Need historical surveys for my property, I said. As far back as they go. She pointed me to a row of metal drawers, and I dug in. Most of it was standard lot lines, deeds, but then I found it. A 1946 survey map, hand-drawn in ink. My cabin was there, a tidy square, the river curving nearby. In the center, circled in careful pen, was a note. Primary freshwater spring, high yield, potential for municipal use. Tests from the same year showed enough flow to supply a small city. Cold, pure, mineral-rich water. Back then, the county couldn't afford to tap it. Now, it was worth millions. Lillian knew. Her husband's old files must have led her straight to it. I rolled up the map, thanked Martha, and left, the weight of it all settling like a stone in my chest. The harassment started small. An orange notice on my porch claimed my exterior lights violated HOA rules, odd, since I hadn't touched them in years. Then a county truck showed up, a man in a vest spraying orange lines across my lawn for a gas line inspection. We don't have gas here, I told him. He shrugged. Orders from above. My mail started arriving opened, just the client letters. A design bid I sent ended up with a competitor. Then came the break-in. Nothing stolen, but my drafting table was covered in wet, black dirt, a photo of my property from above in the center, the spring circled in red. Clients canceled, citing anonymous warnings about my unsafe business. Tire tracks appeared near my well cap, fresh enough to smell the rubber. By week 4, the town turned cold. Neighbors stopped waving. A small fire scorched my property line accidental, the fire department said, but my security footage was wiped. Lillian wasn't just leaning on HOA rules. She had people, utilities, county offices, maybe even deputies working for her, dismantling my life piece by piece. I started digging. The fake gas line inspection led to Riverstone Development Group, hidden behind a shell company called Northridge Services. The wiped footage traced to an IP address tied to Pinnacle Consulting, owned by a man named Victor Slade. His name kept popping up. Underpriced land deals, forced sales after code violations, always with Riverstone waiting to swoop in. The drone photo of my property? High resolution, commercial grade, watermarked by a contractor linked to Riverstone. This wasn't just Lillian. It was a machine, and Victor Slade was running it. I knew I couldn't fight this in county court. Lillian's reach was too deep. So I called the one person who could outmatch her, Governor Abigail Harper. 2 years ago, I designed a state veterans center, and she'd been hands-on, respecting my work. I sent her everything: fake notices, the drone photo, the shell company links. 2 days later, her assistant called. The governor will meet you Friday at your cabin to discuss a state project. It was a cover, but word would leak. Lillian would hear state project and think I was lawyering up, desperate. She'd come for the kill, and I'd let her. Friday morning, I set the stage, coffee brewing, plans for a state-funded community center spread across my table, Abigail's briefcase open with the state seal visible. At 7 o'clock, her sedan pulled up. We reviewed the plans, her eyes occasionally flicking to the window. At 7:45, Lillian arrived with her entourage, a county inspector, a deputy, 2 HOA members, and curious neighbors with phones ready to record. The knock came at 8 o'clock, sharp and demanding. I opened the door. Lillian launched into her speech about serious violations, but stopped dead when she saw Abigail. The governor looked up, calm as a winter lake. "Ms. Voss," she said, her voice slicing through the room. What a surprise. Lillian's confidence shattered. She stammered, her portfolio trembling in her grip. "I wasn't aware you were meeting," she said. "That much is obvious," Abigail replied, standing slowly. "Mr. Brennan and I are discussing a state project. On the record, your business must be urgent," to interrupt. Lillian fumbled, her prepared speech useless. The inspector shifted nervously. The deputy looked like he wanted to bolt. I leaned against the doorframe, letting her squirm. Abigail dismissed them with a nod, and they retreated, Lillian's heels wobbling on the gravel. Inside, Abigail opened a folder packed with evidence: fake work orders, bank transfers, a photo of Lillian laughing with Victor Slade. She played a recording of Lillian's voice from the hardware store. "He'll sell? He just doesn't know it yet." My jaw clenched. Abigail's team was ready to move, freezing assets and issuing subpoenas. "By Monday," she said, "Lillian will be answering questions she can't dodge." And Victor? His calendar's about to get very full. By Monday, Willow Creek was alive with gossip. Black SUVs parked outside Lillian's house at dawn. She was escorted to the courthouse, no smile in sight. Victor Slade's name hit the state news: fraud, conspiracy, bribery. The harassment stopped. The town warmed again, mate, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Should Matthew have fought harder to keep his land private, or was involving the governor the smarter move? Could he have exposed Lillian's scheme without such a high-profile ally? What would you have done in his shoes? Drop your comments below, like, and subscribe for more stories like this.